Travis, guess what time it is? We're back with another episode of Give Us the Launch Codes, but we're ending a trilogy.
Oh, the Blacklist trilogy.
Yeah, we started with retail. Now we're ending it with law enforcement.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's jump in, folks, for our boys and girls in blue.
Oh, this one's going to be a doozy.
Hey, everybody. It's Tom again for another great interview for Give Us the Launch Codes. I've been really having a lot of fun doing these things. I know why Travis does them. They're just a lot of fun. So I had another great idea for interviewing. I thought, hey, let's get to know about law enforcement, policing the streets of this awesome country. Just get a little insight behind basically the veil. So here today for this great interview, I have Officer Thomas. Thank you for joining us, Officer.
No problem.
To start this off, what was the moment that led you to becoming an officer of the law?
So I wouldn't exactly say there was a moment in time where I thought being a police officer was going to be something I wanted to do for a career. But I have to say it'd be an accumulation of things. I had family and law enforcement. And then that kind of got me into wanting to do this career. And then as I got older, I started seeing the more things police officers do, like the DARE program at school, and then getting older, seeing officers interact with us as kids at school and high school. And then I kind of started looking into the career a little more, doing research online, and it kind of seemed like something I wanted to do long term, because I wanted a career where I wasn't stuck in an office all day, and I wanted every day to be different when going into work. And then probably by the time I got to my senior year in high school was when I kind of finally made the decision, like, you know what, like this is the career path I'm going to take. And for a lot of reasons. I mean, I enjoyed playing sports. I liked the aspect of being a part of a team. Mm-hmm. And pretty much all the sports I played growing up, and all the way from like football to soccer and any kind of team sport I enjoyed. And I knew law enforcement was a pretty big a career where it takes a team to accomplish a mission. My senior year in high school is when I made the decision. And then what really kind of, I think, hit it home was when I started taking criminal justice classes in college, when I got my AA degree. And speaking with police officers that would be on campus sometimes, because they would have one of the places I went to college, they had a academy at the college. So I would talk to them, and they would tell me a little bit about their training, what they go through. And then a lot of my professors that I took criminal justice classes in, they were police officers, former police officers, retired. And then they talked about their career, and I was always interested, and then it just kind of got more and more interested. And I was like, okay, as soon as I turned 20 and a half, I started applying for jobs.
That's where you started, just really putting in the paperwork and going into the application process. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're telling me, for what really interested you at the beginning, was the fact that it's not the average job in the sense of the clock in, clock out, you know what you're doing every day. It's like every day is different, and that's what you like, the improvisational day. You have to be mindset wise for it.
Correct.
How long have you been doing this, by the way?
I've been in law enforcement for 11 years now.
And so with 11 years of experience, to the average Joe on the street, how would you describe policing? Like, what is the best way to describe it to us?
I would essentially say it's a group of professionals that solve problems within the community.
That's the simplest way to do it.
The simplest way of putting it.
I like that.
There's a lot more to policing, but if I was going to put it to just one sentence, I think that's what I would use.
So it really is, like you said, that teamwork, and it has to be a team doing the job together.
Yeah. So I guess in a more expanded aspect of policing is basically a partnership with the community and the professionals, aka law enforcement, whether it's a sheriff's department, police department. They partner with the community, and they both have the same goal. And it's what it is to make the community safe, because no one wants to live in a city or a town, or no one wants to live anywhere that's not safe. And police departments or sheriff's offices can't really do that without the help of the community.
It's almost like it sounds like two teams needing to work together too. I like what you're saying about the teamwork. And then, so being 11 years in law enforcement, are there multiple roles you've had throughout your career so far?
So I worked for a sheriff's department. I've worked for a police department. And I've also worked for a district attorney's office.
And what would be the difference from those three? So to really break it down more.
Yeah. So the sheriff's department so typically they're larger because they run the jails, they run the courts, and then they also have, it'd be like a city, right? So if a city's contracting a sheriff's department to do their policing for them, for example, if a city doesn't have enough money, or they're unincorporated, or they can't pay, or don't have enough money for a police department, sheriff's department would patrol their area.
That's when they come in.
Oh, okay. Would do it, yeah. So, but then they can also get a contract through a city. So if a city wants to hire a sheriff's department, it's almost like a menu, if you will. It's so if they want patrol, the city's going to pay a certain amount. If they want detectives, they're going to pay a certain amount. If they want motor officers, they're going to pay a certain amount. So the more things that you want your city to have, whether depending on, like a canine or detectives or patrol, most of the time patrol is just the basic. That's what you're going to get, right? Because that's what you want. But if you want these other extra things, you have to pay. The city pays more money to sheriff's department.
That's interesting. I like how you describe it. It's like a menu, just picking off, and then you decide. Oh, okay.
And then police departments are created by the city, and they essentially hire their police officers. They hire their chief, right? So the chief works in the chiefs of police. Can't say it's for all cities, but most times are hired by the city manager. So the city manager hires the chief of police, because the city manager is essentially the one that is in charge of the city. And the city manager and the chief usually work in tandem because they're executives of the city.
Okay.
Right? So,
that's I know that.
And then that's kind of how a police department starts up for a sense. But most police departments in most areas have been around for decades and decades,
hundreds of years, almost. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's one that in California that's opened up recently that they started from the ground up, and they're still a newer department, but it's kind of few and far between there. Most places are established. Once you have a police department, most people don't like to go away from that because the city can kind of have control and have more of a say in like the things that the police department does, as far as like the gear they can and can't purchase, or their finances. They still have to go to the city to go get all those funds and do those things, and they have to go to the council. There's a whole checklist of things the police department has to do before they do certain things. So in other words, I guess, for police departments, differs from sheriff's departments is the city's the one that picks the chief of the police. They're the ones that hire their police officers, so they kind of have a say in like the quality of police officers they want to have there, right? Versus a sheriff's department, you're taking hundreds of people because they have to fill jails, fill the courts. So not to say there's one's better than the other, but there's just that's like the biggest difference.
It's like a different structure, really.
Exactly, it is a completely different structure. Yeah.
That makes sense because you said.
And then the sheriff, you got to think about too, is an elected official.
That's right. Yeah,
is not an elected official.
As it, well, because then, like you said, like the difference too is like the contracted, one's not, so it's going to be run differently. Like any other really industry, when you have contracted and not contracted, it's going to actually be run differently, and that is interesting. That is like that. All right. And what was the third role you said?
As far as
going through your experience, like your roles.
District attorney's office.
Yeah, the roles.
So district attorney's office. Oh, the DA's office. The DA's office is essentially part of the county.
Okay.
So, but we at the district attorney's office, we work under the elected official, the district attorney.
You work under that. Okay, under him per person.
There, I would do investigations essentially. So I work in tandem with attorneys that are prosecuting criminal cases. For the county, right. So a police department or a sheriff's department or any law enforcement agency, as far as it goes, is like someone that commits a penal code violation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They commit a crime, that goes to the district attorney's office, and they'll have an attorney essentially review the charges, the case. They look through the reports and all the evidence, right? And they decide if they're going to file the charges on this person, and it goes through. And then at that point, it gets assigned out to another attorney, and then that attorney prosecutes the case and goes to court and represents the people. Our jobs as investigators, we essentially assist the attorneys in prosecuting the case. So whether it's they need help, more assistance interviewing witnesses or finding victims, because sometimes victims aren't always cooperative, or even just finding witnesses too, subpoenaing witnesses, doing interviews if we need to, locating suspects, all that kind of stuff.
That's what basically you and your team comes, and that's what
we help the attorneys to make sure that their cases get filed. And then as far as I guess roles I've been a detective in an investigations unit. I've been in the SWAT team. I've been an explorer advisor, and what an explorer advisor is essentially there's police officers that will mentor young adults that want to be police officers, but most programs they call them explorer programs because most of the time these kids are exploring the option of being law enforcement. And
Right.
we, depending on where it's at, whether it's like a sheriff's office or a police department, we take kids that are interested in that. We teach them we teach them about the penal code. We teach them how to do like traffic stops. We take them on patrol with us and let them do ride along. So it's good. It's considered community service, so they get credit for it. And then they also get good experience. They call them explorer competitions. So we teach them how to do certain scenarios like domestic violence or active shooter stuff. There's like a competition once a year, and they all go, and they get run through a scenario by another agency, and they grade them based off of their performance in the scenario. That was one of the things I did with the Explorer program. And then trying to think.
Oh, cool. That's cool. As a competition.
I've worked in the jails. Like I said, I worked for a sheriff's department before, so I worked patrol there too. I was a field training officer. So now, yeah, I currently work for a district attorney's office.
The training that goes into all this, what is that like for just even to start off and then all the way through when you move on? Like you said SWAT and even the Explorers being a mentor. What is the training for all that like?
Here, at least here in California, there's a post-certified academy that they put people through. So when you go, let's say you apply for a police department,
mm-hmm.
you apply to be a police recruit. So they'll hire you as a police recruit, and that department will essentially prepare you for what's to come in the academy. So they'll tell you, hey, like study these penal codes, these radio codes, study the law enforcement code of ethics. So it's kind of guide you on what you should or shouldn't be studying for the academy.
Okay.
And then some agencies will they call it a pre-academy, and then it's basically, they go in there and they kind of stress them out and they yell at them. They make them do push-ups, sit-ups, do all the PT stuff. They can memorize things, make sure like all their gear and their uniform squared away, all that kind of stuff. So that way when they get to the academy, they have a good idea of what they're going to be going through. And as far as academy, it's about 6 months now. And within that, it's, they're testing them as far as like for their physical ability. They run them through scenarios that they would encounter as police officers, whether it's like domestic violence, active shooter, traffic stops, felony car stops. Some places call it high risk car stops. Just depends on where you go,
mm-hmm.
what agency.
Right.
Everyone calls it something different. And then they also test them on, they test them on defensive tactics. So like handcuffing suspects, fighting, best ways to subdue suspects. So that now goes all the way from firearms training. So they have to go to the range and do firearms training. There's a certain amount of hours that they have to go through before they pass. So there's obviously tests that they have to go through in order to pass the academy, whether it's firearms, defensive tactics, and then there's academics as well. So they test them in like the case laws and things police officers can and can't do. So all these things kind of add up to the 6 months that they're in. So every day they're doing something, whether it's, like I said, defensive tactics, running into scenarios. And then with those, they used to call them learning domains, but now I think it's just essentially their academics. They have instructors come in and teach them about these things before they're required to take tests on them. So It's just like school. An instructor comes in, or a teacher, a police officer that has experience in a certain field. For example, if they're going to be tested on investigations, they're going to have someone that specializes in investigations to come and teach the class to these new recruits. And so once they graduate the academy and they have their basic post certificate, that's what it's called, they will go into a field training program. And then that's when they ride along with a veteran or experienced police officer, and they get taught how to be a police officer and actually do it in the field now, because the scenarios that they put them through in the academy and the things that they teach them, it's very different from what you actually experience in the field. Because if the fake stress in the academy isn't like real stress in real life, something traumatic happened, or you have to deal with something traumatic, or you have to deal with someone that's violent, there's no timeout, there's no stopping. Like you're here to handle it, and you got to handle it. Like there's no stopping.
Yeah.
So that's why they assign someone as a field training officer to make sure that they're safe. That's the biggest priority, is officer safety, obviously,
mm-hmm.
and law enforcement. So not only do they make sure that they're safe, but they teach them how to be safe. They show them different tactics. They show them how to do certain things, whether it's car stops or doing pedestrian checks, which is like stopping someone in the street and patting them down for weapons or whatever it is that they're doing. responding to calls for service, whether it's like a domestic violence or a counseling call or neighbors fighting or a traffic collision or a DUI investigation. So there's like a whole gamut of things that obviously as law enforcement they have to respond to. So depends on where you work, but most of the time the training programs are about anywhere from like 4 months to a year. So
Right.
it just depends. Some departments are huge, and it takes their training programs a whole year long. Some departments are a little smaller, so their programs are a little shorter. So it just depends on where you work.
Just depends. Almost as you're saying, it just depends on the size of where you're at.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And then so I guess for the kind of go talk about the same question. So for as far as being a detective, there's never really a specified amount of years, and this goes back to depending on what agency you work for. But sometimes we'll have a caveat that you have to be off probation to apply for detective assignment, or you have to be a police officer for 3 years or 5 years or 7, whatever it is. That's usually the prerequisite is years on, off probation. Just depends on the department. But once you get in, there's usually typically like an oral interview or a written test. There could be scenario-based questions or scenarios. It just depends on where you work. And once you get the spot, and you pass the test, usually a supervisor will call and say, hey, you've been selected for the spot, and congratulations, you go in there. And then there's more on the job training. So it's almost like every time you get a new assignment, now you're doing a whole new batch of training, similar to the field training program, right? When I became a detective, obviously I'd never been a detective before, right? I went from being a street cop to being a detective, so I had to get trained how to do that stuff. So I was lucky to have good partners that were in there, and they mentored me in how to do certain things. And then they also send you to, I guess you'd call it like a detective course, but most places have somewhere where they send you to like an investigations course, but it's about 2 weeks long.
Okay.
And it's a lot of just like PowerPoints. They show you how to do surveillance. They show you how to interview suspects, all that kind of stuff. They train you how to do that, but it's similar to the academy. Like it's all fake, it's not, their classes.
It's simulated, yeah.
Exactly.
And then you have to still do it organically, like
and then
you said.
I learn better doing like hands-on stuff and like on the job. So like I felt like I learned more in my unit with my partners learning how to be a detective than I did at that school. And that's just my opinion. But people that are police officers and that excel in it, they are much better at hands-on training, because that's how they learn, because they get to do it, right? So once you get to do it, you get to do it again and again and again, and you get better and better and better. Versus people that can sit down and they can learn something, but then they have the problem of applying it because they're not good at hands-on training.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're doing, but they can't apply it. So that's
Right.
usually where we have issues. As far as like when I was a field training officer, we'd have issues with people that they could learn it, but they couldn't apply it because they weren't good at the hands-on training part of it.
Right.
They couldn't learn through like repetitive doing something over and over again. They were only good at like knowing how to do something, but they couldn't apply it in real life.
Is there like when you said at the beginning, when you become a street cop, is there a probation period with a detective, like the 4 months to a year, or is it just you're a detective?
That depends on the department as well. So once you pass the academy and you go to be on the street as a police officer or a deputy, you have typically a year to a year and a half of probation.
Right.
Sometimes it's 2 years depending on where you work. So you get your 6 months. So within that year and a half, 2 years, you'll have that 6 month, a 4 month to a year long training program.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, you're on probation probably for about 6 months to a year, depending on where you work.
Right.
And that's kind of how that works. That's the probationary period. And then if you get put onto a new assignment, like being in investigations or a detective or whatever kind of unit that you're going to go into, some places have a probationary period, but some places also do not. So it just depends.
Does really the probation period, is it really dictated by the size of the city that is being policed? And like
Is a probation period
Yeah.
dictated? No. It's
Okay.
usually just like internal policies.
It's just how they set it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think the long probationary periods are actually like a good thing to have, or should it be a little shorter in your opinion?
I think long probation periods I think a year to 2 years is fine.
It really helps out everyone. Like you said, safety is the most important thing.
Yeah, so probation periods are meant, just like any other job, is if someone makes a mistake, they can get rid of them without cause. Is pretty much what probation.
Yeah, like any
is.
it's like any
You know,
company.
that's not how they word it, but that's pretty much what it is.
And every company's like that, no matter what you're doing.
Whether someone's on probation or not, I mean, if they, someone messes up bad enough, like they're going to lose their job, right? In any job that you do,
Right?
So,
of course.
But yeah, longer. I think it just depends on the department that whatever they put in place is up to them.
Now, you brought up how you do have to study and memorize a lot of laws. Obviously, that's a big part of the job. What is that like, though? With each city, counties have their own jurisdiction, which means there are different laws for those counties to cities. Do you have like a little trick and hack that you use to study all that, to like know when you need to know this, need to know that, especially when you're crossing city lines? Like, what is your way of going about studying all these laws? There are so many of them.
Yeah, it's a good question because we're going from a sheriff's department to a police department. It was different, for sure different. The radio codes are different. Some of the laws are not laws necessarily, because most of the time California has its own penal code system,
right?
So most of the time that's across the board. But radio codes would be different. The phonetic alphabet's different. So like when you call out license plates, like from one county or one agency or one police department to the next, some use like Adam Boy, Charlie, Alpha versus Alpha Bravo, Charlie. Some use different ones. But for me, it was just repetition. And then I use something I use in school is Quizlet. So I would make my folders, and then I would put my the radio codes or penal codes or whatever it is that I was trying to learn, streets, case laws. I would put that into Quizlet and then make the folders, and then I would just study like that. That's usually what I would do. And then a lot of it's practical application too, because like if you're arresting someone or people for the same charges over and over again, like, okay, this is this one, this is that one, this is this one, this is that one. So a lot of repetition and knowing. It's the same thing. Like to this day, like there's some vehicle codes like I've probably written 100 times.
Yeah, just now it's muscle memory.
Someone a ticket, but sometimes I'm like, wait, what was that? I mix the numbers up, but there are a lot because there's thousands and thousands of vehicle codes, penal codes, hundreds of radio codes. So it just depends. But most of the time, yeah, making that Quizlet. I mean, even to pull it up for reference. But like when I would, if there were certain things I couldn't remember, what I would do is I would type it up on a sheet of paper, and I had like they call it law enforcement call it a war bag, but it's essentially just a big bag with all your gear and anything else that you want to put in there that's going to help you with your workday. I would get 8x11 sheet piece of paper, and then I would type or make cheat sheets for myself, and I would laminate it, and then punch a hole ring in the corner, and that way I could scroll through the sheets of paper for stuff I needed to reference, whether it was like case laws or vehicle codes to pull vehicles over, like if tail light, this, that, like it was all reference to that. Or if I would also do like maps of like the city, I would do that. So it's all within like a little ring that I could just flip through.
You just keep going. It's a big, like you said, it really is repetition. Then when you're doing the same, like you said, case or pulling someone over the same thing for the same time over and over again, now this becomes part of like, okay, every time I know what this is.
Exactly.
You brought this up when you were saying how a department gets set up, the difference between, the sheriffs and then just the regular police. What then is like if you break it down for me, the chain of command from top to bottom?
For a police department? Or
yes,
department?
Both, if you could, please.
And this varies, but most agencies, this is just a generic answer for that. For a police department, it would be a chief of police. Sometimes they assign an assistant chief or a deputy chief. And then from there, it could be a commander. And then under there, it could be a captain. And under that, it could be a lieutenant. And then below him would be a sergeant. And then below the sergeant would be a corporal. But some places don't have that. Some places have a chief of police. They'll have captains. So it'll go from the top down. This is how I'm speaking, from the top down. The top would be the chief. And then next in command would be captains. And then lieutenants. And then sergeants. Some places have chief of police. They'll have commanders. And then straight to sergeants. And then to their corporals if they have a corporal program or like a master officer program or a bonus deputy program or there's all kinds of different names, but there's usually like about 4 or 5 levels of rank structure police departments. And the same with the sheriff's department. You could have the sheriff, and then you could have the assistant sheriff or a deputy sheriff or and under that they'll have typically like captains, lieutenants, or commanders. Usually, sometimes they're equivalent to commanders, lieutenants, and then down to sergeants, and then they'll have bonus deputies or sergeants, or sorry, bonus deputies or bonus deputies or corporals. It just depends, but every department, for the most part, in my experience, like working in one city, the next city over has completely different names for some of the things that they call their corporals or their master officers or their.
It's like you said when
For
calling.
the most part,
Yeah.
sergeant.
It's like what you said when calling out a license plate number. It really is different.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It just depends, but like
Yeah.
for the most part, the sergeant role is usually what they call their sergeants as a sergeant, right? So and then lieutenants too. But sometimes, like I said, some police sergeants don't have lieutenants; they have commanders.
Yeah, it goes to yeah.
So, but yeah, the sergeant is always there because usually sergeants are in the field with their people still.
Yeah,
like still a part of the team. Essentially, they're the ones that run like the patrol teams for the most part, depending on what department you work at.
Cool. And then while in your 11 years doing this job, have you ever had to work with state or federal agencies, like the CIA, FBI, NSA? What are those interactions like if you've had to work with them?
Yeah, I have. I've worked with DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. I worked with the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms. I worked with the FBI, which everyone knows the acronym.
Female body inspector.
Exactly. Yeah. Trying to think of who else. I've worked with a lot of different agencies, federal agencies. Homeland Security. I worked with ICE. Not worked with, but alongside, I guess you could say, because when they if they're victims of crimes, they're also we take
the crime is on you. Yeah,
we have an obligation to investigate it, right?
Okay.
So I don't think I've ever worked with CIA before. They don't really typically work. I've worked with Secret Service before, but I think it's about it.
That's cool, Secret Service.
And what's that's kind of normal for most departments because they do the like the counterfeit bills, like counterfeit money.
Oh, they do?
They do those investigations, and they also will usually send them into them.
And what is that like again? Like when you have to interact with them, is there anything different about it, or is it really just like, hey, got more people working with them?
For the most part, it's not very different. Everyone knows their roles. Everyone knows what they're there to do. So like I'll give you an example. So if the DEA is working an investigation and they ask for our assistance, whether it's going to arrest someone or helping them as like a street team to go and pull cars over for them. We know our role is to do what they ask because they're the ones that are running the whole investigation, and then they know like whatever they need to do for the investigation needs to be taken care of on their end. So it's kind of like mutual agreement. And most of the time, before these operations are ran, you get together with them, and everyone has an understanding of what their role is. So that way, when things happen, there's no guessing on who's taking the case or who's arresting this person or whose jurisdiction it is, or there's no fighting or arguing. Everyone kind of knows what they're there to do.
Everyone already knows their roles.
It's already pre-planned, yeah, everything.
Oh, okay. So the planning goes in, and so there's never confusion.
Yeah. So like if the DA wants to run an operation within a city or a sheriff's department's jurisdiction, they go and say, hey, we're going to be running an operation, just so you're aware, just so you guys know that we're in your area. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay, cool. And then do they need your assistance? Do you not need your assistance? And then if they need our assistance, now they come and the two agencies will get together and they'll discuss what the plan's going to be.
Okay.
That's kind of how it works.
And then when you brought up Explorers Program being a mentor, that having that there, the Explorers Program, do you think should be maybe a requirement too on the steps of becoming a police officer because of what it does so early on in helping getting the younger generation ready before they even start the actual application?
I think it's a good idea for kids to do if they do want to be in law enforcement, but I don't think it should be a requirement because during that time period for kids, there's so many things going on in their lives. So whether it's they're doing sports, which is what most kids do, and a lot of officers do, then a lot of them play competitive sports. A lot of them go on to be professional athletes, and then once their professional careers don't work out, they go, they become police officers or deputies. Not all of them, but for the most part, people that are police officers or that end up in that career, And any career that you choose, there's a lot of things going on in those early years of your life, where whether it's going to college or you're in high school and you're playing sports, and you have homework, and because the Explorer program is pretty demanding, and they have high levels of expectations for the kids that are in the program.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I don't think it should be a requirement, but it would be a good idea for them to do if they can, at least for like a year or two. But I don't think it should be a requirement.
Being in this line of work for 11 years, how does this, or even at all, factor into the way you go about voting? Does your job affect that, or are you still voting the way you do?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I don't vote.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a registered voter. But I have my own beliefs and voting, and like.
And your job never changed that.
No, but I mean, I would say like if I had to lean one way or the other, I would say that I'm more conservative than I am liberal. There's some things Democrats are like, okay, that makes sense, but then you hear Republicans most of the time. I'm like, okay, that makes sense too. But for the most part, yeah, I would say I'm pretty conservative, and most of I guess the way my belief systems line up for the most part.
It's interesting that you say that too, because out of the people I've been interviewing, a lot of them have said, no, work actually doesn't really affect at all how I vote. It's almost like two separate thoughts. I have work and I have me. And that's what's interesting. It seems like a lot of people are actually like that.
For most part, I would say like law enforcement in general, everyone leans would be mostly Republican or lean conservative, because that party is usually the one that supports law enforcement. Like the laws that are passed, if you look at the majority of laws that were passed in the past 10, 15, 20 years in California, like, I don't know if you know this, but I think it was like 2014 or 15 when they made a lot of narcotic related health and safety and penal code sections, health and safety mostly, they made it from a felony to a misdemeanor. So if someone was arrested for methamphetamine, it'd be a felony and they go to jail, right?
Right.
Possibly prison time, depending on what it was or how many times they offended, or probation or parole or whatever factors there were.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a misdemeanor. So now these guys, most of the time, people that are drug users, they go out and they commit crimes.
Right.
Because they need to feed their habit, right? So now these people that we can no longer arrest anymore, we can arrest them, but they get cited and released, or they get cited and released in the jail, or they get arrested and it's all misdemeanor, so they're in and out of jail within a couple days, right? So now they're back on the street doing drugs, breaking into people's cars, breaking into people's homes, stealing people's cars. So that's why you've seen since that specific law change in California, you've seen crime skyrocket, and that's a democratic or I guess a liberal police system
result.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, because I know you said sheriffs are elected, but going higher than that, do you think, bringing this up, like you said, how the change has been in 20 years, should an officer of the law be more of a high-ranking elected official beyond sheriff, like really be a part of, like, the council, you would say? Do you think that would maybe help more out, not just with your job, but the community in any way?
I'm sure it would. But obviously, the systems that are in place now, there's checks and balances for a reason. There's chiefs of police or sheriffs only have so much power because they already do have a lot of power because they're running a law enforcement agency. So it comes with a lot of power. To give them even more power, or I wouldn't say power, but to make them a part of it, I think would probably be a good idea, because I think what people don't realize, and obviously the past few years of all the issues that law enforcement and certain communities have had, I think what people don't realize is law enforcement, most 99.9%, and I know I can speak from experience, the dudes that I've worked with are like the best people, and they genuinely care about people.
Mm-hmm.
And there are bad ones, but there's not a lot, and I can speak that from experience. And the few that do the things they shouldn't do are the ones that are like, it's all cops, it's all this, it's all that. Well, it's not, because you can't say that about every single race or every single person or every single person that does a certain job, right? Like, all of them are like that. No, that's not how it works. So I think having law enforcement or like a chief of police or a chief involved in those things, I think would be good, because I think they realize the struggles that communities are having that a lot of elected political officials don't know about, or wouldn't know about without talking or being there. And police, chiefs of police or sheriff's department or sheriffs they actually get to see the statistics. They know the issues that are going on in their communities. So in a way, I think it would be beneficial, and I'm sure sheriffs and chiefs, they do talk with elected officials. There is a lot of collaborating, but I think what you're talking about is actually having
almost like a department of police officers in a sense, like a part of the cabinet, even like someone really representing that factor, like that. That's what I mean, like just a little higher. Like, do you think could help out? Yeah,
I'm sure it could, but the only problem is that's one voice versus however many people that don't agree with them. You know?
It's still a lot more, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, it's at least working. Do you feel like it is
for this our government system, or
just at least having, like you said, chief of police? At least there's someone there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Having a chief. Yeah. Having like an executive head of whether it's like a sheriff's department or a police department, having someone that's in charge. Obviously, that's what the whole point of like a rank and structure. You know what I mean? Or having structure like that is good for a police department because that's kind of because paramilitary organization, and a lot of the things they do requires decisions and people to be. It's just like government, right? There's checks and balances. Like,
and this is what this
your
is.
Lieutenants, your captains, your chief, like everybody's looking over things to make sure things are where they're supposed to be at. You know, making sure that all the guys are doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts at police departments that I think a lot of people don't realize. And I think that yeah, for sure, having chiefs and sheriffs is where it needs to be at.
Because you're 11 years in, and most careers are like what? 20, 30 years, right? Usually on average.
Typically, yeah.
Do you see in any point in the future of just this country alone, do you think having a police presence is going to always be needed, or is there a point where maybe humanity can get to that, quote unquote utopia-ness, or are we just going to always need someone to keep us in check in that way?
I don't think police departments or sheriff's departments will ever go away. I don't believe that we can live like that because I guess if we go to in that direction of living and everyone checks themselves, right, there's going to be violence, just like anywhere else in the world where there's not like because you can use an example. You can go to a part of the world where there's no military presence, there's no police presence, or anyone to enforce any kind of laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionist group or a terrorist group or
an extremist group of some kind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the world, and I think what people forget, because we're lucky enough to live in a society where we have police departments and we have, if you call 911, someone's coming.
Right.
A lot of people, I think, in this country haven't lived in or gone to other countries and realize you can't call 911. There's no one to call. It's just you, right? So if something bad happens, or you get shot, or you get stabbed, or you get really seriously injured just hiking or doing something, no one's coming for you. You can do it yourself, right? Here in the United States, we don't have that. So we get people that don't realize that how lucky we are to live in this country. So if we were to go without a police department or without someone protecting other people, because that's what police officers and law enforcement do. We protect people's rights. That's what we do. That's part of our job, is to make sure, right? Like you see police officers during when there's riots and people protesting, they're not there to go and hurt these people. They're there to make sure everyone's safe. And then what happens? People start trying to hurt the police officers, right? Or there's bricks thrown, or someone gets hurt in the crowd. Well, now it's our duty to intervene, and by any means necessary, right? So that's our job, and we do it in a way where people aren't getting hurt and injured. Yeah, people do get hurt and injured, but it's not to where it's
just to minimize it, is what you're saying.
Dying, yeah. It's not where you look at other areas of the world where they're cutting people's heads off, right? Because they don't agree with their religious beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that here, right?
No,
because if you did,
we'd be seeing it. We would know. We would know.
We would know, right?
But so what you're saying is that no matter how utopian America gets, there will always need to be just someone in a uniform. Just
doesn't need to be a uniform, but if we, like I said, if we go into that utopia, I think most societies are going to. You can call them whatever. You can call it a police department. You can call it like an enforcement unit. You can call it whatever you want. But there's going to be someone that's enforcing things people should and shouldn't do. I think it's just a normal thing, for people to get checked by other people who aren't doing something they shouldn't be doing. And you don't see it every day in society now because people are too afraid to get involved.
We evolved so much from the 1800s, for example, 1700s, all
Mm-hmm.
that from the past. We're
Yeah.
here. Do you think we need that? Because just in your opinion, humans are still have one that animalisticness inside them, and there's also our tribal mentalities too that are deeply enrooted subconsciously in us. You think it's just a human thing that is needed compared to when you watch a sci-fi movie of distant planets, how they're made up. It's like, well, yeah, that's something else. This is still humans.
Mm-hmm.
You think it's just a human thing that will be a necessary thing till the end of time on this planet?
I do. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about
Okay.
before. Violence, will always rule the world in any way you look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if one group, or like you said, our tribal instincts, so we go back to police departments, right? So if the whole reason it was created was to protect communities, right? Because if someone's doing something better, neighborhood watch, or like there's all these things that were, but police departments in general it was created to protect people, right? And it was essentially a collective group of people that wanted to protect their community. That's what it was, and I think that's what it would be. Kind of go back to the question that you're asking. People are going to get together because they want to protect their families. They want to protect their community. They want to make sure their kids and their wives or their parents feel safe, right? So, and that's kind of why I do what I do, because I want to keep the areas that the people I care about safe, and I know what's going on, and I can stay in the loop of things, so I know, if bad things are happening in certain areas, and I can be the person to protect my family or whoever, other people's families, because that's why I joined the job, is to keep the communities that I grew up in safe,
Right.
And I would do the same thing if we didn't have if we didn't have police, and we're like you said, back to our tribal days, or we had tribes or whatever it is. Like, I'm gonna protect my family. That's just,
and that's the precursor to, you could say, law enforcement. Is you start off by protecting your family, like we did way back then.
It's a natural instinct,
and now
for most
grows.
men.
Yeah. Just it's in there. It's just a part of our DNA.
Exactly.
Both protecting and, like you said, the violent nature. They're both there simultaneously. So that's why we're here, in the sense of what we have as law enforcement.
And I think that's another problem with society now is a lot of people say things, like you see people like that go out to the riots, or not riots, I'm sorry, the protests, and they say what's on their mind because they can, right? If you let's for example, people that are protesting against anything today, like in the modern day and age, and the state we live in now, they're making these protests. You go to a different country,
your skull's getting caved in.
There's no protest, right?
Your skull's getting caved in
because we have that right here in this country, and people should appreciate that. And people take advantage of it. That's the problem.
Speaking of appreciation, like you said, what would be one thing then you would like to say for the public to understand, public and even elected officials to understand about the police? Like, what do you think would help, even to maybe not end, it can probably never end, but at least to lower and minimize the hostilities the general public, as you've seen on the news, have towards police? What's something that they should know to really understand what you and your team is doing and trying to do on a daily basis for us?
They should know that most police officers, most deputies, most law enforcement, they're there to do their job. And when they started it, it was to do it for the right reasons. And it still is. And I think people try to turn it around and make it look like law enforcement are the villains, but when in reality they're not, because they're just trying to do their job, And the ICE agents now, you look at these guys, right, just trying to do their job, trying to get people that are here illegally that should have been here in the first place. They're going in, they're getting them out of here. That's their job. And these people also have to make a living. Like, this is what they signed up for, right? And whether they like it or they don't like it,
everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to, you got to do your job, right? And if you don't like it, hopefully you leave. But right now they're put in a hard spot, and That's just where they're at right now. But they're there to do their job, and you can't hate them. I mean, these poor guys are driving on the highways, and people are throwing large rocks to their windows that could potentially kill them. You know what I mean? When these guys are just trying to do their job.
So that's what the people need to know. Like we're trying to do a job because the initial thought of why we started doing this job is for the greater good of all of us to
Yeah.
protect.
Exactly. It's to protect our communities. Yeah, and I think that's what people lose track of is that most law enforcement, 99, like I said, 99.9, everyone's good people, and they're just trying to make sure that our community stays safe.
Would you say to those who, like you said, bringing up ICE, who are opposed to that idea and are doing what you said, throwing rocks instead of that, would you suggest to them, hey, call your elected official, vote, speak, use your words more? Would you suggest that? Like you're saying, if you're opposed,
The people that are throwing rocks
Yeah.
at those.
It's use your voice, not violence. That was something you would say to them, because that rocks have.
I think that's a good idea, but I think those kinds of people typically only learn through violence back to them. So if someone commits violence back to them after they've committed violence, they're now put in check, right? So maybe I should do that next time, right? That's why I go back to my original, like what I was talking about. One of the other questions is violence rules the world, right? Because these guys think they can get away with whatever they want by throwing rocks at these guys' windows. But imagine if, like I said, different country, you throw a rock at a police officer or whatever agent's window, and they get out, they're probably just going to shoot you, and then they're just going to drive away. But these people that are doing these things feel protected because they know, like, a lot of law enforcement hands are tied because we don't, like, most agencies don't want to. We can't touch that, right? Because it's a political issue or whatever it is. So these guys do that because they know nothing's going to happen to them, essentially, right? Maybe they'll get arrested.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're going to go to jail for a couple months or whatever, maybe a couple years, maybe, right? Because all the laws in California, they're just, it's not tough on crime. The state isn't like really like that. So these guys, they usually walk on these charges, or they'll do half the time they're supposed to do, or whatever it is. I think people that do those crimes, especially if you're throwing rocks through people's windows or whatever it is, and there's obviously every intent that they meant to do that. I don't think there's any way. I don't think you could sit down with those people and be like, "Hey, maybe we should
break bread.
Use your words."
Yeah,
because they had the opportunity to do that. Or no matter how angry you are, like, you don't. If you get so angry that you do that to another person, like, what else are they capable of? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And where have they mentally, made their lines in the set?
Exactly. Yeah.
I know right now we are pretty much you could say, just in that really tense spot right now in our time. Do you see it ending, or do you see we're still in the escalation process before we get back to like a calmer state across the country?
That's tough to say. I don't know. I could see it going either way. I could see it getting a lot worse. I could see it getting a lot better. But I would say, in light of recent events, I would say it's probably going to get a lot worse. I think.
Okay.
I think people, for whatever reason, they watch YouTube or they watch Instagram or whatever social media platform they are, and they believe everything for face value and what they read without doing any kind of research. And I think media and social media as well influences a lot of the younger people, and these young people don't fact check; they just believe what they hear. And then you can see it, like, when they go to debate on the live public forums, and then they get questioned about, like, okay, well, where do you find this at, or where did you learn this at? And they don't have any answers, right? It's because they didn't do the research. All they did was just see what they saw on TV or on social media, and then this is the truth, right? But in reality, most times it's not. And there's other factors that weigh into all those things and the issues that they're having, and they think that is going on. You know what I mean?
And then what would you say to the elected officials who aren't on the streets, who are either opposed or against what you're doing? What do you say to both sides of those? The elected officials, like you said, who are supporting officers, and then ones who are chanting defund the police, for example. What are your words for both of them?
I think that the ones that want to defund the police, I think the ones that are obviously on the side of the police are the ones that actually care about the communities, and the ones that want to make the world a better place. And I think the people that want to defund the police are probably not, are probably against. Maybe they're not against it, but I think they don't. They need to realize that if you're gonna defund, that's what I guess they're still calling it. But if you're gonna defund the police, that means less money for their departments, less money for training, less money for them the people to hire people to work the streets. So all those monies that's not going to police departments is just in every way making it harder and harder for police to do their job.
Mhm.
So I think that if for whatever reason any public official has or whoever has an issue with the way police are doing things, I think you should go out and see how hard it is to do the job. So go on a ride along or go to your local police department and ask questions, because a lot of people just see, like I said, they see what they see on social media, they see what they see on the news, and they take it for face value without doing any kind of research or knowing really what the job entails. Like, what do you like? Most people don't know what a police officer does on a day-to-day basis, or they don't know the kind of things they have to see or handle on a day-to-day basis or throughout their career. You know, so I think
Okay.
a lot of people are just don't know, and it's not their fault. But I don't think you can judge without putting yourself in those shoes. You know.
We got just a couple more questions here before we wrap it up. I wanted to ask you more. Uh, how do you go about dealing with a difficult call? Like, what's something that you do to keep yourself still in the zone when it comes to when you roll up on a very difficult situation?
Most of the times when you're going to a call, or obviously right, so it gets dispatched to you, so you kind of have an idea of where you're going to. For me, a lot of times it's game planning in my head what I'm going to do when I get there, and the game planning goes back further than that. So every day when I'm working, or when I would work patrol, just driving around, even though like where I'm looking at cars, I'm driving around the street, making sure no one's doing what they're supposed to do. I am constantly running scenarios through my head on like, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do, or if this happens, this is what I'm going to do, or if that happens, this is what I'm going to do. Right. So mentally, I've I feel prepared before I get that call. I get the call, I'm like, okay, this is probably what's going to be. And then as I go to the call, I'm making check boxes, right? Okay, is there a suspect outstanding? Do I need to make a perimeter? Do I need more units? Do I need to call for outside assistance? Do I need a supervisor there? Am I going to need a less lethal option? Is this going to be a potential for a shooting? Do I, so when I'm going to the call, I'm already pre-planning what I'm doing. And I think for me, that's what helps me keep calm and helps me work through the situations once I get to something that's happening, or even if it happens, like if I'm, I guess for example, like if I'm doing a pedestrian check on a person and I'm trying to see if they have weapons, or if like I see someone that I recognize that has a warrant, or they're on probation or they're on parole. Before I approach them, I already have it in my mind and I already know, and I think this person could kill me. They could have a gun on them. They could have a knife on them. They could have this. They could have that. Right. So before, as I'm approaching them, I'm already setting up my body position. I'm already setting up where I'm going to go, or if they start shooting at me, where I'm going to go, if I need to take cover. So there's all these things that are going through my mind right before, and that's what helps keep me safe and prepare me and mentally get me to where I need to be once I start talking to them. And then you need to realize that when you're talking to them, or like you go to a call for service, like you need to already have it in your mind, like, hey, like I'm going to take control of the situation, like whatever it is, like I'm going to go in there and I'm going to handle it. And you have to have that mindset, because if you go in there thinking like, well, we'll see what happens, or we'll hopefully this isn't going to happen, or hopefully that, like you can't think that way. You have to tell yourself like, this is how it's going to be, this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to get done. So you need to have that mindset of being ahead of what's going to happen and being prepared for what's going to happen. Because if you don't, wherever you're going, and that person that could be hurting someone else or hurting you is already ahead of you.
So, and what you're saying is, again, having consistent contingencies in your head before the call is even made, that is what helps you. And that's what you would recommend, really, for these things. Like, really just have everything mentally mapped out.
Absolutely.
Now, and going through that, too, when there's certain difficult calls, there have been talks, of people saying, like, hey, for certain calls, for let's say someone involving a mental health crisis, the officers should get a social worker involved. What do you say to that? Like, is there time for that, you think, or is that an extra step that's just too much? Or
So that does happen. I think that's a misconception.
so it does happen,
It does
actually.
happen.
Okay, good.
So there's, I mean, at least the places that I've worked, there's county programs typically where you can call a mental health specialist and you can wait for them to come. But like you just said, it takes time, right? So we're out there with these people, whoever it is, that's going through a mental health crisis, or they do need some kind of mental health treatment. We, as police officers, can check them in for a 72-hour evaluation, right? So they call it 5150 evaluation here. You can check them in, but you have to have, obviously there's reasons for it, right? So there's criteria that they have to meet for us to do it. But if they don't meet that criteria, we cannot check them in. Even though we're like, maybe we should take them in, there's rules that we have to follow, and there's laws that we have to follow as well before we can check someone in for that kind of thing. But if we are like, maybe this person, we can get some resources, even whether they come the night or the day of when we call them, we'll sit there with that person for however long, and then they'll come and they do their evaluation on them.
I like how you said that it's a misconception. It's like, nope, we have it ready. Yeah, like it's there.
That's
good.
That's
cool.
Can't speak to all across the country.
No, but it's good to know that a service exists like that.
They're there.
That plan.
They're in place. But I think where maybe what you're talking about is they've talked about replacing social workers with police officers to go to those calls
instead.
Not
as a team together.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I think that's been talked about. Maybe, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but that's not a good idea. Yeah, because sometimes we go to these calls and these people have weapons, or they're barricading their house, or whatever it is, right? So now we have different issues. Just because you're mentally ill, it doesn't give you an excuse to commit crimes. You know what I mean? So even when we go to calls, and as law enforcement, when they go to calls, just because someone's mentally ill doesn't mean they walk away and don't do anything, right? Sometimes they have an obligation to do something for the most part. Not all the time, but for the most part. If someone's being harmed or a crime's being committed, right, then now there's certain things we have to do, fortunately.
And for my final question, I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for those who are thinking about joining law enforcement, who are about to apply, in the middle of the application, to basically the recruits? What are your words of wisdom and your advice for them?
It's a long career. I'm not even, I wouldn't say halfway through my career at this point. But it's a long career. Enjoy every bit of it. And I would say cherish the people that you work with, because sometimes you're with them more than you are with your family sometimes. And you have to take care of your partners and take care of the people that you work with. And this goes for all, not just law enforcement, but anybody that you work with. I think it's important, because sometimes those are the only people we interact with sometimes during the day. To make sure that the people you work with are okay, and that they're doing well, specifically law enforcement. And I think that if we take care of each other more, I think they can make it a better career for everybody.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this interview, Thomas. What I liked about this is how I've seen officers still to this day, like a police officer is the last remnants of knights that our society has. When you think about how knights started at the beginning. To have you on again. That's it, everybody. Another great interview for Give Us the Launch Codes. Back to you, Travis. And that concludes my Blacklist trilogy.
Well done, Tom. Really enjoyed these interviews.
Thank you, man.
I found Officer Thomas's interview to be very fascinating, mainly just because he is a police officer. It's such a visible position in everyday life. A couple of things I found interesting. You only had an hour with him, I take it.
He's a busy guy, so I was really just focused on the hour. I wish I had 3. I'd love to bring him back, because for me, everything he was just saying, I'm like, this is a 3-hour conversation. I know we got to kind of give a time limit, but this guy you could talk to for hours.
I wanted to ask him more about why he prefers not why he's not a registered voter, and therefore I assume he prefers not to vote and participate in elections, because, you know, as he talked about, he clearly has, you know, political views on, you know, where each party stands with policing. Police have been known in to affect local politics significantly, whether it's, you know, getting the police unions vote or getting the, you know, the chiefs vote, and, you know, cops vote. And I'm curious. I'm curious what it is about the current political landscape that makes Officer Thomas not want to participate at this time. I would have loved to have learned more about that. You know, you know, is it like, you know, just general disgust with politics, which is something that, you know, he certainly shares with a lot of people right now.
I think that might be it, because remember me, I haven't voted for the last 2 presidential elections just because it's like there's no point, because one, these 2 parties aren't even giving the other parties not just a seat even at the table. Mm-hmm. So that's my theory. I mean, again, hopefully we can interview him again just to really go more into everything again, like almost like a round 2.
Hopefully I could be there.
Oh, I hope so too, because really, like I said, I
could
go on an hour's conversations with this guy. But I think that could be it, because I'm just thinking, when I heard that in my head, I'm like, I can see that. I can see it just because it's like, in the overall aspect, government as a whole, just our government historically alone in America, you fuck up a lot. Yeah. And the good you do is just like, oh yeah, you bought the extra strength Band-Aid. you didn't go to Walmart this time, you went to Target.
Well, that goes to something else, because that goes to the fucking up part. That goes to something else where he talked about, like, you know, people think when a cop does something wrong, it's like an indictment against all police officers. And in fairness, the fact that ACAB, all cops are bastards, is like now in mainstream lexicon, I can understand why he thinks that. And some people earnestly believe that in a very literal way. I always thought that ACAB meant that the system kind of taints everyone that participates in it, no matter how well-intentioned. So, like, I think Chris Rock had this joke, or not really a joke, but it was just part of his routines, where he says,
but some jobs can't have bad apples, okay? Some jobs, everybody got to be good, like pilots. American Airlines can't be like, you know, most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples that like to crash in the mountains. Please bear with us.
And you know, he's talked about, like, obviously, you know, the people that do bad in policing, they're few and far between. But as, you know, when people talk about bad apples, the saying that comes from is a few bad apples spoils the barrel. So, like, you know, if I worked in retail, and let's say I lost my shit in front of a customer, or I was incompetent, or otherwise I was shown to be incompetent at my job and a liability for the store, I'd get fired. And I probably would not have a good recommendation from my boss that I could use in finding other work. And that would be it. I'd just be fired. I'd be out. Whereas, you know, if you screw up royally as a police officer, especially, like, you kill someone that wasn't a violent threat, it's not that simple. It's, even if the department fires you, your police union could get you rehired, or could get you hired at another police department, which, this sounds crass, but it kind of reminds me of why people are mad at the Catholic Church about priests committing sex crimes. It's not just that the priests were committing sex crimes, it was that the Catholic Church was actively trying to cover them up instead of doing real discipline against the bad priests. And so it's like, you know, it was a systemic critique, not a critique against the initial crime in and of itself. I would have loved to, like, talk to him about that. I wonder, you know, I'm sure he would probably agree that, like, to some degree, that, like, you know, being a police officer is a hard job, but it's a job that you can't make mistakes in, and it's, you know, it could be, and it's a huge problem when someone does make a mistake compared to other, you know, normal jobs that most other people have.
I understand that frustration you're saying about that when you think of, like, when a regular person does any regular job, like you brought up retail, you mess up, the punishment comes down so hard and fast. In retail, fast food, office jobs, clerical, anything. And then you see, for like you said, you're bringing up, you see like how priests and officers just get quickly moved around and like almost just a quick knuckle rap at most. And I get that because the average person is be like, wow, like why is it always why would it be my ass if I did something similar?
The consequences are more severe for that job, or not consequences, the consequences of misdeeds are more severe than like mislabeling an item or just being mean to a customer or I don't know, not stocking properly. Like,
okay, well, that's a common frustration the average American would have because you're wearing your Rams jersey.
I am wearing a Rams jersey.
Think about this past opening weekend of football.
Woohoo!
How many fuck ups every player's been doing every game? No, really. Yeah. All those like face masks and horse collaring, which everyone knows is a no-no in football. It's a big no-no. But it happened every single game this weekend. Like intentional.
It happens all the time.
No. But this is like this weekend had every single fucking play almost.
Yeah, we're talking about week 1.
Yeah, this week recording.
Congrats on your Raiders, by the way, beating the Patriots.
You. Congrats to your Rams. But yeah, no, it's September 8th. First weekend of football happened, and it just seemed like every single fucking play was the dumbest penalties. But I'm like, you guys get paid millions upon millions of dollars. You fucking up on live TV. I do anything close to that at my job, I'm probably looking for a new job.
Yeah.
So it's just I get that frustration that people who are not officers of the law and aren't family members to someone who's officer of the law having that because it's just like what the hell?
Yeah.
Shit. And then also too though the second thing when it comes to, like you said, a few bad apples, rotting the whole barrel, the systematicness of it all, that's what frustrates people. It goes to a quote it's a really good quote from a very good police show, which I hope you watch one day, from Southland. We hold cops to a higher standard because we give them a badge and a gun. The only problem is we recruit them from the human race.
Yeah.
And it's a sad kind of goes both ways thing where it's just, I think the answer... maybe not the answer, but a great step forward for a better outlook and a better, really just society when it comes to law enforcement is we got to not only hope when we see an officer that it's basically like, oh, sweet, it should be positive with seeing an officer, never negative. It really should be. You got to hope that. And 2, we also got to do our part, which is a weird thing to say because it's like, really, it's on us? It's like, I think it's on everyone because... as I said in the interview when you were listening to it, the officers today, cops, are the last remnants of knights. So we gotta just have that faith still. Or yes, and really, because people do, not everyone. Yeah, we have our disgruntlements with our boys in blue, but we gotta have that faith still like we did back then with knights, or else just the whole thing falls apart. So hopefully things do get better overall. Hopefully on the news, the worst thing you see is just, hey, officer just dinged a car. And it is a human error and problem that we have when it comes to just really both sides of the law.
Well, until that day comes, whenever I see a cop car, I'm always watching my speed. Because we've all done it. We've all gone just like 5 miles over the speed limit on most highways. And usually it's just to keep with the flow of traffic because everyone else is doing it. But whenever I see a cop car, I'm always like, okay, no speeding, slow down a little bit. And if I see one behind me, I am pulling over and praying to God he's not coming after me.
I've had 2 speeding tickets. I've been pulled over for speeding twice.
I once got pulled over for like running a stop sign, but thankfully, and it was funny. It was on my way to your place one day.
Oh, you told me this.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened. I didn't even realize that I like went through that stop sign too quickly, and I got pulled over, and I thankfully got let off with a warning. But no, the worst stop I had was I was on the 5 freeway. And I was trying to get to an exit. My exit was coming out, but the problem is the right line was being blocked by a slow-moving van, like a really old clunker van.
Always the old clunkers.
That, is like, okay, this guy is this guy probably should pull over and call the tow truck. Something is seriously wrong with this van, clogging up traffic. And so I try to like pull out into the left lane. The problem is the car behind me was doing the exact same thing, and we nearly hit each other. But I'm the one that got pulled over for it. I was like, I couldn't. How did I know he was gonna pull out? Okay, like I can't read his mind. We both had the same idea. Why am I getting in trouble for this? I don't know. Maybe it was easier for the CHP guy to catch me and not the other car. I don't.
Maybe because you're a Rams fan.
This was near Burbank when this happened. Actually, I'm trying to remember. Were the Chargers in town by then? I don't.
The Chargers should have stayed in San Diego. That's all I gotta say. They fucked up. Well, at least our teams had started off well. I guess that's the most important thing to end this episode is that our teams started off well for the beginning of the season.
Well, watch that statement become horribly outdated by the time this episode airs. Like, I don't know, the Rams and the Raiders just like tank in their divisions.
I joked with my dad saying the only way the Raiders would make it to the Super Bowl is we just hit it so hard every game that it's the fourth string playing. Like we everyone got battered and injured so badly, the fourth string made it to the Super Bowl. Can you imagine that? It's like the replacements with Keanu Reeves. Alrighty, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my first trilogy. More interviews will come in the future. Again, we are really hoping to get Officer Thomas back with us again for a more just long-form interview, because really, just a great conversation. Thanks again, though, Officer Thomas, for taking the time out of your busy day. I'm Tom.
I'm Travis.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Bye, everyone.